Hey guys, welcome to the Let's Talk About It Minot podcast. I'm your host, Rob Fuller. Trusty sidekick Jonathan Starr here with me. First podcast of the new year. Yeah, we're back in business, baby.
Yeah, I mean, we had one podcast that never came out, and that's producer Johnny's fault.
Yeah, that's all right. We're not worried about that. You guys had a lot going on, so that one, there wasn't much going on, state, national, or anything at the end of the year around holidays. So
the city council got busy that last week.
Yeah, there was a little bit of with the special meetings and stuff like that you're referring to. Yeah, there was a little bit of, and we were traveling, so I wasn't even able to go to that one meeting.
Yeah, right.
So lots going on all the time. Lots of irons in the fire for the city. So how was your holidays?
Holidays were great.
Good.
We had good Christmases, had a good New Year's, and now it's good to be back.
I assume your ham and carrots for Christmas were fantastic.
Yeah. I had ham. You know what? I ended up only having ham at one Christmas.
Yeah.
One Christmas I had ham. The next Christmas I had, on Christmas Eve, clam chowder. Homemade clam chowder. That's awesome. Money, dude.
Yep, absolutely.
And then we had a brunch on Sunday morning. And then on the next day we had Mexican food.
Okay.
And then...
Well, I figured I'd point out I did not eat turkey at all over Christmas.
Like, well done.
Yes, I knew you would be excited about that. We had, I think, Christmas Eve, we had some appetizers and different stuff like that. And then Christmas Day, Mom had prime rib.
Okay, that's
and New Year's was ham. And I think we had mashed potatoes and meatballs in there somewhere too. So
that's
no
awesome.
Turkey. I figured you'd get a kick out of that. So
that's well done. I think every Christmas could be done that way. And every Thanksgiving could be done that way.
You can't change Thanksgiving, man. You just can't do that. That's almost a communist statement.
Oh, no.
So,
yeah.
So we got a lot going on today.
Things changed,
national, state stuff, but I know a lot of what you guys are going to want to talk about today is some of the city stuff that's going on. So we're going to kind of speed through some of the other, and then we'll get to the city stuff. But
let's do it.
Nationally, first thing I think we got to say is congratulations to the North Dakota State Bison on your 10th national championship.
In 14 years.
14 years, 10 national championships. It was a great game.
35, 32.
Yeah, I was actually surprised with how fast the Bison got up on them, that Montana State was able to come back. So it was a great game.
Yeah. It's incredible what they've done over there, especially how they have been able to continue the culture, not just over players, but over coaches.
Yeah. That's 3 different coaches that have done this now.
The hardest part, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, so I think it shows culture. Mm-hmm. Culture and leadership are 2 very important things, whether it be in city or whether it be in college coaching.
Well, this is true. Is it time for them to move up?
Gosh, I would like to see them do it. I just, you'll never see, it will be hard. Let's say never, not say never. It'll be hard to see the same kind of success that they've had at this level when they move up. So, I can see the goods and the bads in both of them. For competition's sake, I think it is time to move up. But, how do you do that going, we may never, ever win another national championship, So because they'll never be able to recruit and out money the big schools, the LSUs, the California teams, Alabamas.
Well, you see like SMU this year, which is not even a fair comparison, but they have somebody that a school that has struggled since they had dominant years many years ago, and they've struggled for many years after that because of sanctions and stuff. And they had a good year, and they got wiped out in the playoff. And Indiana the same way. I mean, again, you're talking about not a blue blood, but a school that's been established in the D1 football for a long time, and they got wiped out in the playoff.
Yep.
And so those are people that would potentially be able to compete, and they can barely compete.
Absolutely. Well, and you look at the transfer portal thing they have now, right? You get a great recruit, and these kids can go, you know what? Alabama's going to give me $5 million, so I'm going to transfer out next year. That would be hard for a school in North Dakota, I think, to keep up with, because we don't have the funding that those bigger schools are going to have.
So you have Carson Wentz and you have Trey Lance, both who went high in drafts.
Yep.
Will that happen again with the accessibility of the transfer portal? And my point is this: Trey Lance Carson Wentz did all right.
He had a great first year until he got hurt, and then he struggled a little bit after that. Yeah.
Trey Lance never really has had his moment, and so as a NFL team, when you're looking at the draft, are you going to start not looking at the small schools anymore, knowing that that player probably could have transferred to a bigger school and actually proven themselves, and they chose not to. So you were like, why didn't you want to do that?
Right.
I don't know.
I mean, there's goods and bads to it.
Weird take, but
obviously there's goods and bads to it. But again, just funding wise, I don't think that if they move up, it's going to change everything for them. So
yeah, interesting stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. How about another big news? And we'll get to U.S. national news here shortly. But Trudeau tendering his resignation from the 51st state up north. What do you think? He didn't want to be governor anymore.
He doesn't want to be governor anymore. Yeah. Yes.
I'm happy for Canada. Let me just say that.
Yeah, I think probably it's a good thing. It's probably time. It seems like it has been going that direction for a while now. I don't know about years or how long it's been trending that way, but it seems like his approval has been dropping. You called it the 51st state, and a lot of people in Canada, or not a lot of people, but a lot of leaders in Canada have been saying
offense to that.
Yeah, they do take offense to that. And then you have some people in there talking about if Trump places tariffs on Canada, then they're going to start placing tariffs on the electricity that they send down to some of our northern states.
Yeah, Michigan and New York, I think is
for sure.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. I think though that probably a good thing Trudeau is done, and hopefully somebody steps in there that has a high regard for the relationship between the U.S. and Canada, and for, might I say, border security, because, and I don't say that from this step. They don't have Mexico or whatever at their border, but what they do have is China and Russia. Yeah. And so it's really important that there's a strong border there.
Did you, there was a report that came out, I think it was right before he resigned, 23% of the population of Canada are not Canadian.
That's crazy.
They're imports, immigrants, whatever. And the biggest places, like you said, are China and Russia.
So, and when you say that, is that like first, like how do you track that? Because people would say, well, 100% of America is not immigrant.
Right.
Right.
But I think what they're saying is not naturalized born Canadian citizens is I think what the report was referencing. Yep. So
yeah, that's crazy. That's a crazy
right.
Stat.
I mean, you already have 25% of your population that isn't from your country, that may not like your country, that may be up there for the wrong reasons, right?
That's should not happen, I don't think.
Well, and that's, ultimately, I think what some of the woke-minded people, and I think Trudeau was very woke. I think we've had some of that in the country, like over the last 4 years, Biden and Harris, trying to change the makeup of these countries so they aren't as far right or conservative as they used to be.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So anyway,
so Trump has this. I don't know what his plan is right now, but he's talking about the Gulf of Mexico, saying that should be Gulf of America.
I think that's hilarious.
Talking about Greenland. Yeah. Trying to. What do you think about all this stuff where he's making United States?
I think it's typical Donald Trump.
That's the truth.
A little. Do you want to call it not boastfulness, but he's very unabashed about things, and he'll say what's on his mind, and I appreciate that. I really do. Like, do I think Denmark's ever going to give up Greenland? Absolutely not. Do I think we should call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America? I think that's not a bad plan, quite honestly, because it is our Gulf of America. They don't do anything with it. They don't. It obviously butts up to their coast, but. But I think it's good because the other thing that you see too with him saying and doing some of these things, what just did they report? All these caravans that are now coming across Mexico, guess what? Mexico is breaking them up and sending them back the other way, and they're not even getting to the U.S. border anymore. Wow. So if Trump's saying something like, hey, we need to change the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, spurs them to do the right thing and stop all the malcontents and the criminals or whatever else are coming to our border. Not that all of them are, but I think that's a good thing. Right. I do. I think I think Donald Trump. I posted I changed my Facebook moniker yesterday. Uh-oh. It said it's a pillow, and it was sitting there, and it says, "I love when I wake up in the morning and Donald Trump is my president." And I think he's good for the country, and I think he'll be good for our economy and our national security.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, those are good things. The other thing he was going after was the Panama Canal.
Mm-hmm. And again, when you charge one of our U.S. warships $500,000 to go through your canal that we built for you and gave back to you, I think he's just trying to make a point,
Yeah.
right? Maybe you could do a little bit.
Right.
I understand you got to make some money, but maybe you could do a little bit less on our U.S. warships, because not only do we help protect you as well,
Yeah.
we did all of this for
Right.
your country.
I think that, and I am not well versed in all the things at the time, the details of the time when that went down, but I think that shows kind of like what epitomizes what Trump is trying to fight. Is we went, as the United States, we go out, we build a canal for somebody that is to benefit us,
Yeah.
and is to also to benefit them. We give it to them, and then we go and try to act like we're just like everybody else and going to pay the same price or more to use it. And it's like, if you were a strong negotiator, which Trump claims to be, then you would have received even greater impact once you gave it back. I understand that there was some good things that still come from it for us, but I'm talking about in the long term that would affect future generations, not just the
and
now.
again, I mean, fine, you want to charge Russia and China or whoever that's coming through there $500,000 to do that stuff, that's fine. But there should be something, and I'll say this not only about the Panama Canal, but any other country. Any country that we give money to help support financially as our country, those are our citizens' tax dollars. Yeah. When we give those to another country, we should get preferential treatment or beneficial treatment towards certain things. I'm not saying all things, but why, if they aren't going to do anything for us, why are we giving them millions, billions, whatever it is?
That's the key part right there.
Yep.
Like, if you're going to pay, then there has to be something in return.
Absolutely.
And that's the whole point with Canada. When Trump started saying these outlandish things, to start looking at the money flow, because the same thing was with NATO. Yeah. When he started his last time, he was all up in arms about NATO, and then you start looking at the contributions into NATO, and you're like, oh, okay, I see. We are massively out contributing everybody else, and they're not even paying the share that they're supposed to be paying.
And did you see already he's talked about upping it from 2% or 2.5% to 5% for European countries. And then obviously the European countries are like, oh my God, then who's going to protect you from Russia? Right. You guys, if you don't want to pay, then let's just dissolve NATO. We'll keep our money and you guys can figure it out. Right. But that'll never happen. No. So
interesting things.
It is. I mean, all kinds of national stuff. Now, on the national scene, and I got to ask you, because this really bugs me, and Joe Biden and his administration and what they're doing in the last days of his administration to hurt the Trump administration and the American economy and public as a whole, right? The moratorium on drilling offshore, the pardoning of 47 federal prisoners who have murdered people and done other horrific things, to pardon them from being killed, selling the border materials off for pennies on the dollar that we paid for as U.S. citizens. What do you think about all that?
Well, I think the thing that is the worst out of all those, maybe not the worst, but very high at the worst, you may not agree with this, but is this selling the border materials? Okay, because you can get into the politics, and I'm not saying I'd agree, but understand what I'm saying. You can get into the politics of the death row inmates. You can get into the politics of the offshore drilling, but the selling the border materials for pennies on the dollar is a complete slap in the face, not to Trump, but to the American people.
Absolutely.
Because whether that border wall is right or not, we should still get market value for these materials.
It's steel. It's iron. I mean, those are expensive materials.
Right. That's not even political right there. Yeah. That's just, you should get market value for it.
You're wasting our dollars.
Yeah. You're just straight up wasting the American people's dollars there. That to me is crazy. The other things I don't agree with. I think that they're wrong.
And the reason I bring them up wasn't, necessarily is each one right or wrong.
Yeah.
But we know Joe Biden is mentally not all there, right? We've seen that. They've now admitted it. So who's making these decisions? Joe Biden, whose mental capacity, is diminished, is not making these decisions. So some staffer that works for him, or Jill Biden, his wife, is deciding to do these things, and they aren't the person that should be able to do these things.
No, I agree with you there.
And that's where my problem lies. Like, they are doing things to purposely hurt the American public, not just Donald Trump and his administration, but the American public. And they're laughing about it out the door. And that, to me, tells you everything you need to see about the current Democrat Party in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, there's something that has to be that has to be fixed in American politics.
Well, like yesterday, right? The Senate was in Lake and Riley. The Lake and Riley law, and John Fetterman, who I again, I don't agree with him on 90% of things.
Starting to respect the guy.
I am too. He says what he thinks, but he said if we can't find 7 Democrats to vote with the 53 Republicans to approve the Lake and Riley Act, that's why we lost the election.
Wow.
I mean, they even know these things.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I love about Fetterman, and I know that's not the point of your statement, but the thing that I love about Fetterman is, like you said, he says what he wants.
Yeah.
He speaks what he thinks. He is real.
Yep.
And that's what's lost. He's not, they try to shut him up sometimes, and they can't really. And I love that. And I think both parties should have that.
I agree.
And the Republicans do have that. They have their factions within the party. And I don't know that the factions, like the Republicans, might go too far.
Yeah.
But when you have people that actually speak their mind and are, then you can actually get behind and be like, hey, you know what? I don't agree with you there, and you can have good compromise.
Absolutely. I mean, the Freedom Caucus is, I think, who you're referring to, right? I mean, they like to hold things up and demand things in the Republican side. And again, I don't agree with everything they think or say, but like you said, the people that speak their minds, whether it's on the left or the right side, and give you their honest opinion, and you can have some kind of common ground with, right? Mm-hmm. That's what makes it different, because the Chuck Schumers and the, what's his name?
On the what side? Like Jeffries or McConnell or?
Well, Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer, and I was thinking of the guy from California that just became a senator. He was a House guy. Anyway, Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff. Those guys, all they want to do is tell you the party line, right? That's all they're going to do. And so I can't get anywhere behind any of them.
No, there's no way. That part's just terrible.
It is. But anyway, I mean, I think it's pretty sad that in current politics in the United States that they're trying to hurt the American public and the administration that's coming in after them. It's just disrespectful, and enough is enough.
Yeah.
So
agreed there.
All right. We'll move on to state stuff. So yesterday, the 69th?
Yeah.
69th state legislature convened. Kelly Armstrong, our new governor, got on there.
Go Kelly.
He gave his State of the State address. And of course, what do you think was one of the main functions or things that they talked about fixing in his address?
Well, believe it or not, property tax.
Property tax. And I like what they're doing with. If you guys haven't seen or heard anything about this, you can find it on YouTube. You can listen to Kelly's address. I think it's a good start for addressing property tax. Using the legacy fund to help people buy down their primary residence over the next 10, 20, 30 years is good. But, I don't know if it necessarily goes far enough, because he always kept talking about values on homes and the assessed value.
Right.
That has to be changed and looked at.
Yeah. So according to a North Dakota Monitor article, Armstrong said to ensure home ownership remains affordable, key points of his plan include increasing the primary residence tax credit from $500 a year up to $1,550 for the first year.
Yep.
Funding with that'll be funded by legacy fund earnings. Homeowners would see larger refunds each year as the fund grows, establishing a 3% annual cap on local property tax budgets. City, county, schools, park districts could carry over unused increases for up to 5 years in order to plan for larger projects. Mm-hmm. Honestly, when I read this, I'm not impressed.
Yeah. Well, it's not, I like some key pieces of it, but it doesn't go far enough. Right.
Yeah, it doesn't go far enough at all, because they're just trying to increase the patch. Now, I think putting the 3% annual cap on the local budgets helps, but they're just trying to go and put a patch on the problem.
Correct.
If it's fundamentally wrong, let's change the fundamentals of it.
There you go. And I mean, how does that? Let's take the primary residence. So what they said in about 10 years. In about 10 years, it will pay for half to most of everybody's property tax in the state, right? Through that legacy fund buy down. I think at max, it gets up to like $4,900 and some odd dollars. What's the farmer paying on his homestead?
Right.
Oh, wait, he's still paying zero. So he has $1 million house with $500,000 in buildings, another $500,000 in grain bins and equipment, but he pays zero.
What's the hospital cross down paying?
Zero.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's where we need to address some of that stuff again. So it's a little bit more fair. I understand. And I think it's a good starting point. I really do. But if they don't do it right, like he said in his acceptance speech, if we don't fix this the right way, in 2 years, they're going to hand it back to us again, and they're going to approve it.
Yeah. Well, It might get approved in 2 years, but I would also be surprised by that because
In the state?
yeah, by the people getting that approved, if that's what he's talking about.
I think you'd be shocked. I think this time the Keep It Local people did a good job of scaring everybody, saying, hey, they don't have a plan. They don't have a plan.
Yeah, right. And there was scare tactics that were used, but I don't fully disagree with that though.
Right.
And I think that in order for it to, and what's hard about the initiated measures is that it's hard to have a plan with them because that's not necessarily the point of the initiated measure.
Right.
So it's not that they...
Right. It wasn't the measure's job to come up with a plan. That's the state's job.
Right.
Right. So I think what you're going to see right now, and what I was getting at was, there was enough people that said, okay, we don't believe in this because there wasn't a plan.
Right.
State, go do your job.
Yep.
Well, if the state doesn't do their job over the next biennium, I think they're going to come back. I think people are going to change their minds and be like, you know what? We gave you your shot. Now we're telling you to do it. Fix it.
Right. And that makes sense. And I could see that happening because of people. I think there was a lot of people, even me, I said that I'd vote for it, and I did. I followed through with what I said. But as it got closer, I was like, man, honestly, I'm not a fan of what I'm voting for here.
Right.
I'm a fan of the principle, though.
Yep.
And there may have been other people like that voted no because they weren't a fan of the actual measure, but they were a fan of the principle.
Right.
And that would switch.
I've talked to a lot of people that did vote no on it because they were scared, right? They're like, oh, what are they going to do? They're going to raise income tax. They're going to raise this. They're going to raise that, because those things were floated out there again as scare tactics to get everybody to say, hey, we don't want this. Right. So
yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, all right, we'll move on from state stuff now. Let's get to the city stuff. I know you guys have been talking about our meeting from the other night yesterday. There was the planning commission last night. So where do you want to start? I'll give it to you.
Okay. Yeah. You guys had a great meeting with the legislator.
38 minutes.
I'm kidding.
Oh,
throw back a couple meetings. That's not it. Yeah, you guys had a 38-minute meeting. It was probably one of the shortest meetings. It was the shortest meeting since you've been on council.
Absolutely.
But it also was probably the most impactful. One of the most, probably a budget meeting could potentially be more impactful. But other than that, this was probably the most impactful meeting that you guys had.
Well, it was a big meeting because of the recommendation.
To the city.
Yep.
And so first off, we've beat this subject into the ground, and some people probably want us to move on from it. But I think the number one frustration is the lack, not the problem with the investigation from the standpoint of she didn't do her job, the investigator didn't do her job, the investigator didn't investigate deep enough, her notes had bad grammar. Mm-hmm. How did you feel about that when you heard that? When you get called out in the report for your notes?
Well, and so again, I think a couple things are going on there. One, did I think it was fantastic? No, I did not. Yeah. Okay. Why she focused so much on my part, we had that whole podcast about what I thought and so why she focused so much on my part, I don't know. Yeah. Again, my part was minimal. I got called out for making personal references in there and everything else. And her notes were kind of just as sloppy as mine, if you want to use that terminology. Here's the thing that I will say though, because of North Dakota's open records laws, she was under the gun. Right. And that's where, not making excuses for her, not saying.
This is a huge point.
It is. She was under the gun, right? She had to get this stuff back out and to us before the open records request was, because I think they have 75 days, if I'm not mistaken. And our date we used was August 26th. Is that the right date? I'm pretty sure that was the right date. Don't quote me on that, but I have to go back and look at my notes. So she had 75 days from that day to get everything put together and back to us. And I talked to 21 people, all right? And then when we turned the investigation over, when we said, okay, this has gotten big enough, I can't be doing this anymore. This isn't what I need to be doing. We need to have a full-blown investigation. We turned it over to her. More people than that came out. I think it was 47. 47 people came forward and talked. So it over doubled. So not only did she not realize that the scope was going to grow, right? Because of the number of people that came out and some of the things. So and again, I'm not making excuses for the company. I'm not making excuses for the bad grammar, but they were under the gun to get it out before, because we had to release the records. We had to release my notes. We had to release all of that stuff 75 days after. And so if she didn't have the report out, everybody was going to go, okay, here's this stuff. Where's the following? And so
That makes sense.
I think, and Harold had brought this up at that meeting with the legislators. I'm not for necessarily making so people can't have public
this
officials
is a hard
records,
topic,
right?
but it's
I'm
important.
not for that at all, because we want transparency in the city and as a city government. But while that investigation is going on, and let's use that investigation as an example. If we don't have to release the notes in 75 days, and we can have meetings as a council to discuss the things, because there's also open meetings laws where we can't discuss in private any city employees' stuff. We have to talk about it in an open session. How do you talk about some of those things that you read in the notes or you read in the report, but you haven't validated or anything else? I mean, so while our laws are good for transparency, I'm not opposed to saying, hey, during the investigation, we release nothing. As soon as it's over, we will release every note, every communication, everything.
Go and put a maximum length on investigations. Like, they have to be done within 6 months.
Correct.
Right now it's basically 2.5 months. So that over doubles the length that you'd have for an investigation.
Well, at least it gives people time. It gives the people in the city time to be able to look at and discuss what they found. It gives the investigator time to actually do a full, thorough investigation, and maybe throw the investigation report into Chat GPT to write it for them, so it comes out all nice and pretty.
Yeah, dude, it's powerful.
But I mean,
would have helped.
So I see the good and the bad. I understand everybody's issues with the report, the poor grammar, the note taking, everything like that. I agree with that 100%.
So, but what I honestly just can't get past is it says, however, if Chief Klug cannot or will change his leadership style to address these issues, the department can. I can't get past that line. I can't get past the line that you can use that as a reason to let somebody go or retain somebody, because it's unclear. And
again, I don't know what Harold used to make his decision. We haven't had that discussion between him and I. I take the recommendation at its face value. I think it was a good recommendation, quite honestly.
We'll talk about that part.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, we were given, I've said this, we bought a Mercedes, we kind of got a Datsun, and we had to make our decision, or Harold had to make his decision based off of what we got. And
makes sense.
It's good, bad, or otherwise, it just is what it is.
So 3 points were made. One is Klug is no longer going to be, and the recommendation says no longer going to be chief of police. It makes it appear like he could come on as a patrolman.
He cannot come on as anything else. The agreement is for him to leave the department. He has a number of hours, 300 hours, I believe, of PTO that we will be paying out over the next 14 months leading up to his retirement. Okay. I believe he's free to get another job someplace else if he so chooses. And then that's it. Yeah. His last paycheck will be at the end of this month, if I'm not mistaken.
Gotcha.
So.
Very cool. Very cool. So that's covered. Then the second part is finding the interim person, and City Manager Harold Stewart addressed a little bit that he's already been in touch with a recruiting firm that handles these situations. Basically, what if that part is successful? What does that look like to you?
Well, so I think he's talked to actually a couple different firms. Okay. So first, there's a company out there, or an entity, and they have in their fold retired sheriffs, retired chiefs of police, and everything like that, specifically for this instance. So they have somebody who can come in and watch over the department for us while we're doing our nationwide search. Right. Okay. So this guy will be a retired police chief or retired sheriff, whatever he is. And he will come in for 6 to 12 months and lead the department kind of in the direction that the city asks him to lead it while we're looking for our new chief. Okay. Now, Dale Plessis, Captain Plessis, who has been the interim chief currently, has done a fantastic job. Right. He has done a great job, and in no way, shape, or form is that any indication of him doing anything. But he has his responsibilities with investigations and the detectives. So that's what that looks like. And then what we will do is the firm that he spoke with, we will start a nationwide search for a chief of police. And I don't know if it'll be a Herald or if there will be a committee put together to interview and look at, but that'll be done. And I hope within a 6 to 12 month period, we have a new chief of police in there, leading the department and hopefully fixing the morale and some of the other issues that we heard about and had to address.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you have a goal where the interim does work on some of those issues immediately to try to create a fresh, clean slate for the new
I think in a broad level, maybe, you know, in a broad scope, but we don't want the interim fixing anything that would the new chief would come in and then change anyway, right? You know, so we kind of we want culture, morale, and basically happiness at our PD.
Maybe the interim shows up to roll call, since that was a big
That would be a great thing, you know, come in and talk to your people, come in and find out what's going on in the night shift and stuff like that. Absolutely. Strong leadership. So
set that example. All right. And then the third thing was, the dispatch. And I think that this is great, where basically it's a new direction where the city's going to be involved in dispatch with Tom Joyce, fire chief is going to be involved in dispatch, and then somebody from the police staff will be involved in dispatch. Probably a good.
I think that's a good move because one, dispatch is for all three divisions, right? I mean, it's for the city of Minot EMS services, the fire department, police, all of it. So just to have PD over it, I think worked for a little while, but as that's grown and changed and some of the issues that have come up, I think it's a good idea to have a representative from the city, a representative from the PD, and a representative from the fire department as a small group or committee that oversees it. And they make the decisions as to what happens in there. So there can't be any favoritism or whatever you want to call it being played by just one group in the PD. It's now a bunch of people that have to answer that question.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense.
And I think in the Herald's recommendation, it says it was an interim thing. I would honestly say I would encourage it to be a full-time permanent thing. I think that would be beneficial not only to dispatch, but to all three, the city of Minot, the PD, and the fire department.
And now you're willing to support funding for a new police station. I'm kidding. You don't have to answer that. But the question that I did want to ask you is, obviously you're part of the linchpin to get this going. Okay. People began to reach out to you. It wasn't necessarily, you didn't run on this, you didn't campaign on this, you've already mentioned that, but you became a key person when this started. And now that you've seen it basically finished, there's still some details that are being worked out, but it's, for all intents and purposes, it's finished, right? How do you feel about it? Is this what you were?
I didn't have a goal going in. So I mean, if you're asking, is this what I wanted to happen? No, I'm not necessarily saying this is what I wanted to happen. I did not have a goal. What I want to happen is for our PD to heal and to fix. And I think a lot of that, as we've talked about before, is morale and culture issues. And if this is what it takes to fix those issues, then I'm fine with it. It was the right decision. Now, there's still some other things I think that are going to be looked at and have to be addressed. And if that comes to us, we'll take care of that as well. So,
but this puts it on a path where that healing can happen.
It does. I think this is a good first step. I think our officers deserve, like I said before, the very best that we can give them in leadership, in culture, physical building, everything. They deserve the very best because they're out there every day doing for us what we can't do for ourselves. And so I think this is a very good first step.
Yeah, very good. Well, I'm honestly, I've been a critic of parts of this investigation. I'm grateful that it has come to an end. I don't enjoy being a critic. You know that. Well,
I mean, you're not Switzerland, are you?
Well, this one I haven't been. So it's not I don't enjoy it. And so I'm thankful for it to come to an end because I think it's good for the city itself. And you see a lot of people that have negativity towards the police in Minot. And probably a lot of it is not deserved because it's probably a natural feelings. But when you have stuff going on like this, then it makes those people feel justified in their feelings. So having strong leadership from a police
Well, and again, transparency too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, one thing you want to see out of your public servants, whether it be city council, the police department, whatever, you want transparency. And I don't know that that was necessarily what was going on in our PD. And so, while people in the community have felt that they've been targeted or mistreated or whatever, I'm not going to speak to that because, there's always two sides to every story. But I think more transparency will help with that. And so, the narrative isn't just their side or our side. It's this is what happened and this is how it went down. And not that you can always speak to every investigation or everything, but again, good first step towards healing. I mean, we need to get past some of what's been going on over the last 4 to 5 years and move forward so our PD can grow and heal because we're down a number of officers. We need to start fixing that.
Yeah, it's hard to grow officers when you have all this going on.
If you have poor leadership, and again, I'm not speaking specifically of any other person. I'm not specifically speaking about Klug. I'm just saying if there's poor leadership that leads to poor culture, and you don't have the belief from the junior officers, from the patrol guys, from the sergeants, from everything else. If you don't have that and you've lost the hearts and minds of your department, you will not be able to recruit and you will not be able to retain because those guys are a small community, whether you believe it or not, and they talk to everybody. They know every other officer in every other department, and when they're looking to move, and do you think they're recommending Minot? Absolutely not. Right. And so that has to be something. Minot's PD used to be a jewel in the PDs in North Dakota, and however many years we've got to this, we need to get back to what it was before, where everybody wanted to come work in Minot.
Said before, and it's said often, but we have a pipeline at the Air Force Base.
Absolutely,
we should not have a problem with staffing our police department.
Not at all. And I mean, we have. The criminal justice department up at Minot State. I know that there was some hard feelings there between some people at the PD and the Minot State for some things that had gone on or hadn't gone on or were perceived to have not gone on. And so we can't have that. You got to put your personal feelings aside and you got to get out there and do what's best for the city and the department, whether you like it or not. We're going to see that every time something comes up on city council. And I may not agree with all of the things that I vote yes on, but if it's what's best for the city and the residents, that's what I was elected to do.
That's what it comes down to.
Absolutely. So.
Yep. Well, hey, I'm grateful it's over.
Are you? I mean, I'll be honest. There's more things that are going to be looked at and whatever, but I'm happy that we've gotten to this point, and everybody kind of can stop talking about this portion of it at least. We know where we're going, we know what direction we're going, and it's the positive right direction. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Very
good.
Now, last night, hold on before we keep going. Any other questions on the?
Nah, I think that answers a lot of it. I don't know. I think that mostly people were ready for it to be over, for there to be resolution. I think that getting an interim chief in there ASAP is really important because we got to get to the next thing. Right. Otherwise, it's going to feel like we're in limbo. But.
Well, and let me just say this and add this on there too. I think people are glad it's over, but what people have to understand is some of this stuff takes time. Everybody wants all this information. They want to have the tea, as the kids say these days, right? But you can't do that during some of these investigations or during some of these things. And being accused as a city of not being transparent or whatever because we're trying to do the right thing rather than just release information haphazardly. Yeah, I think people in the community have to understand that a little bit too.
Right. It was a terrible time for an investigation to take place. Just be honest. Absolutely. Because we got the investigation, it was either end of November or beginning of December, right in that time frame. Then you have the holidays that are right in there, which I understand the city's still working hard, but you're going to really go in the city council before Christmas. You're going to go and make your decision. You're just not. It's not going to happen. So it was a really bad timing because it kind of felt like that part drug out, and it was just because of the time
the holidays always exasperate stuff like that. Yep. But I mean, is there a good time for an investigation into this type of thing?
No, there's never a good time for your police chief to be on leave and under investigation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that part made it feel like it drug on a lot longer, though.
Well, and again, though, I mean, it really 75 days.
Yeah.
I mean, 75 days is how long it took from the first conversation to her filing the report. Now, it did take longer than that for the city to digest it and make a decision and everything.
Yeah.
But 75 days is nothing. It's 2.5 months.
Right. That part is short.
How do you do an investigation? How do you talk about it? How do you make decisions in that time frame if you don't have it all?
Right.
You know,
no, that part, I think the investigation part was done very quickly. It was just the part waiting for the
right.
decision.
Everybody waiting for the decision, but like
I
you
think
said,
November 22nd is when it was
dropped.
Yeah.
Yeah. So right before Thanksgiving and within a month of Christmas.
It's just a hard time.
And I mean, you know, if you look at the city council stuff during the holiday season, they do try to minimize what you have to talk about and do because, you know, everybody's got stuff going on.
Yep.
And so again, was it ideal? No, but I think as a public and myself included, we all have to understand, that it's going to take time to make a decision because it's a big decision. You know, Harold had a lot to talk about and think about. And so, you know, I don't know. I guess I would ask anybody out there that said, oh, it took too long. It took too long. If you had to fire somebody that worked for you, how long, what's an appropriate time to think about it? You know?
Yeah. Because you can't, like you've already said, you can't include the 2.5 months of investigation.
Right.
And I think I think it's all about expectations though. And that part has struggled throughout the entire investigation is expectations with the public were not always set. You didn't know when the investigation was going to be released. And you don't know.
You don't.
You don't.
And I mean, we're all little kids in that aspect, right?
Yeah.
Because of social media.
We're
the we want our information now society, right? As a whole. I mean, the kids all the way now up to some of us as adults. We want our information now. You owe it to us now. And it's not always possible. That's the only thing I would say.
And I hear that and understand that if Harold Stewart, and this is 2020 vision looking back, said when at the first city council meeting after the report was released that in January or at one of the two city council meetings in January, he would go and give his deal, then I think people would be like, okay.
Well, but didn't he say after the holidays, I'll have my decision made?
Yeah. But what does that mean?
Well, I mean, it was right after the holidays. January 2nd or 3rd, whatever it was.
Right. The first council. But after the holidays, I mean, it took 2.5 months for the investigation, as it should.
Yeah.
It takes, it could be February. Right. That's after the holidays.
Right. But again, you know, I would ask everybody, what is an appropriate timetable to do something like that? I mean, if you honestly tell me that 6 months is too long, I would tell you that.
No, I don't think it's too long.
Right. But I mean, you know, anybody out there, hey, 6 months is too long. We got to know this now. It's not always possible to do that.
You want a thorough investigation.
We do. You want it done right. You want it done fairly, and you want it done with accurate and insightful results.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah. Glad that it's done. Glad that it's over. Glad that we'll be able to move to the next stop and healing can
I'm happy
begin
for
soon.
our department. I'm happy for our officers and hopefully, you know, the sentiment down there changes for them. So
absolutely.
I mean, because like I said, they deserve the best.
Yeah, they do.
Yep.
They do.
Now, what else happened in the city over the last week? What do you got?
Well, I don't know. I don't want to call him out too much. I would really love to have an interview with the president and CEO of Trinity.
Oh, Mr. Kutch.
It'd be fantastic. I would love to be able to sit down with him. First time I met him, he doesn't know who I am. He wouldn't know who I am no matter what, but he doesn't know who I am because it was on an airplane. I'm like, man, who's this guy sitting next to me? Because he was talking with like 3 or 4 people. I'm like, typically this is not normal behavior on an airplane.
Right.
So
you all sit over there with your head down and leave me alone, right?
Right. So I somehow found his name, Googled him. This is like 8 years ago.
Okay.
I was like, oh, okay, it's the president of Trinity. And then the second time that I seen him was yesterday.
Yeah.
At the economic development.
He's a ninja.
Yeah, he's a ninja. You just don't get to see him often. So, and for good reason. because there's a new hospital, new emergency room proposal in Minot.
So yesterday I was at the Planning Commission meeting last night, just listening. There was a couple things on there that I was interested, but the big one was EHC is contemplating building a 23,000 square foot emergency facility up on North Hill across from Baker Hughes on the opposite side of the bypass. So last night there was one chunk. There's a chunk to the east. Chunk to the west that's already zoned C2, but the chunk to the east that they would be looking at was zoned ag. And so they were just asking, Mr. Lochto was asking for the Planning Commission to change it to C2. So EHC, if they decide to move forward, could build and do everything on there. And so that was what happened. Again, a pretty minor thing in the overall grand scheme of building and everything like that. I mean, there's site plans and everything that need to go forward. This is just changing zoning, but a number of representatives, including the president and CEO of Trinity Health, John Kutch, was at the meeting, and they got up and spoke. He's opposed to it.
Naturally.
Yeah, and I mean, would you act? And again, I love Trinity Hospital. I've been associated with Trinity Hospital through my mom family for my whole life, right? Mm-hmm. Trinity doesn't necessarily have the best reputation in Minot anymore. And when I say that, I don't mean in a negative, derogatory way, but when you have people that complain about waiting 7 to 9 hours at the emergency room, when you have not doctors and nurses that are willing to go work other places, I think you got to clean up your own house before you worry about everybody else's house down the road. And so I think, again, if EHC decides to go through with this, like if they bring it, we'll get to see the zoning change at City Council. And if they go beyond that and they say, hey, I think this is feasible, we can build, we can do this, and they meet all the requirements, is that bad for the city of Minot? Competition usually breeds better things, right?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think we should shut down all the restaurants except Longhorns.
Right. I mean, again, we don't stop any other business from setting up next to any other business. And I understand Trinity's nonprofit, and they do and give back a lot into the community. But again, there's nothing up on North Hill emergent for anybody to go to or anything. I mean, if there's farmers or somebody coming in from, like say up in Botno, or, they send them out of West Hope or whatever, is that 10, 15 minutes life-saving? It could be,
Right, I mean, 10, 15 minutes depending on time of day. You do that at 5:30, it's going to be a 20-minute.
I believe the Trinity reps also spoke about, the lack of professionals in Minot and not being able to staff their facility and everything like that. And then you have a nurse that got up and that used to work for them and spoke about having to travel outside of Minot to get better pay and stuff like that. And so, I mean, I know a little bit about it. I know they pay travelers very well to come in there and travel, whether it be doctors, nurses, whatever. And sometimes I believe their staff is not getting the same reciprocity. So, right. I mean, what do you do there? I think you got to fix the issues that you have before you worry about somebody else coming in and doing that sort of thing.
Trinity is concerned because recently you had the Dakota Physicians Group and Surgery Center open, and that was former Trinity employees that
was a bunch of Trinity doctors.
Huge part of that, and that does not have a emergency center with it. But then this would have, and so you almost have a hospital pieced together
between two other. And why does that happen? Why does that happen? I mean, if the doctors loved everything that happened at Trinity, they were compensated fairly and well and everything, do you think they would be out looking to build their own? Well, maybe not.
I agree with you. From the doctor's perspective, they wouldn't be. And then you have the communities. If Minot's about growth and all this stuff, then I mean, you go to the big cities and there's more than one hospital.
I mean, we've talked at length at different times about how stagnant North Hill is, right? And like somebody said the other night, before maybe that was you guys talking on the podcast, before the flood, there was
it's
nothing.
Commissioner Kibler.
Right. Well, yeah, Kibler. Thank you. There was no Walmart on North Hill. There was no grocery store on North
Right.
Hill. If you want North Hill to survive and be viable, you have to put these things up there because we can only grow certain ways, certain distances. Right.
Right.
I mean, so
Yeah.
what are we going to do? Like, and again, I haven't read everything. I haven't seen everything. Again, this was
Really
just
talking about a concept.
yeah. I mean, that's all it is right now. Is they have a preliminary site plan and they had to get the zoning changed, so it could even be a viable thing. And so that's all this is.
That's what's crazy though.
Yeah, the full court press.
The full court press, because that's all that this is.
Yep.
This is just a zoning change.
It is.
Which they get a ton of those. And this is not even a deal where somebody's coming to don't, because this happened at the same meeting, don't allow this zoning change because that's going to be that's going to turn that residential into a commercial property. It's going to affect my view. It's going to affect traffic.
The church one. Yeah.
And that's the standard stuff when you're talking about zoning changes. Like don't do that because it's going to affect all this.
Me.
Yeah. No, this is don't do this because we don't want competition.
Right. And again, that's where I said a little while ago, I may not always agree with everything we see and whatever that comes.
Yeah.
But if it's what's best for the city of Minot and the residents, then that's what we should do as a city, as a council. And again, competition is never a bad thing. I don't think that we would, as a city, in any capacity, whether it be planning commission, council, or anything, we would tell any other business that we don't want them to open because this business said, I don't want any competition, right?
Yeah.
And again, that wasn't necessarily what they said, but I think that's the sentiment behind it. They feel worried that they've lost maybe a little bit of their piece of the pie to the surgery center, right? And now they're going to lose another piece of their pie to the emergent center. So,
okay, and so I mean, and you're wanting to put the blame on you or not, but as a organization, if you're looking to put the blame other areas, you've got to look internally as well. One thing though that's interesting to me when you talk about monopolies on Minot, because that's essentially what Trinity has been.
Well, there was 2 hospitals in Minot the whole time I grew up.
Okay.
There was St. Joe's and Trinity Hospital.
Okay, yeah.
So Minot can support 2 hospitals.
Yeah.
Right? It has in the past and it can in the future.
Right.
So anyway,
and so the one that I look to is Menards.
Yeah.
Because what's interesting to me about it though is when before Home Depot came in 10 years ago, people complained about Menards.
Constantly
complained about Menards.
Constantly.
And so Home Depot's coming in and people are excited. Well, what is this going to do to Menards? Is Menards going to stay in business?
Right. Menards is going to go gone. Yeah.
All this stuff. And Home Depot is, I don't know if they're thriving or not, but they seem to be doing well.
Yeah.
And Menards is still as busy as ever.
Well, and what did it force Menards to do? It forced Menards to address the things that people were bitching about, excuse my French, that they were talking about and complaining about. It forced them to address those things and made them better.
Yes, that's exactly what it did. Yep. Probably the person that got hit the most by it potentially would be a Home of Economy or Acme
Ace,
Tools, somebody like that.
Hardware, something like that.
Ace Hardware, there's still like Acme and Home of Economy and now Runnings are big companies, but they're not
they're more local than the national companies.
And they would carry, some of the brands that Menards didn't, and now you can go get those at Home Depot. Yeah. So there was other people that was affected other than just Menards. But at that point, it was looked at as a good thing for Minot.
Right.
And now you got this, and it's like, oh, this is
funny. It's funny how a good thing can change depending on who's talking about it, right? I mean, again, it's all a concept. It's EHC looking to do something that I don't know if they can meet all the requirements that the city's going to have, and all the requirements that North Dakota Department of Transportation and everybody, but they at least deserve the ability to try, because that's what the free market is requiring, right? Somebody has said somewhere, and somebody saw a need for some medical services on North Hill,
right?
And I'm not opposed to it if it's best for the city of Minot.
The best part about it was that one of the guys that was there representing EHC, said that his address was whatever Frisco, Texas.
Frisco,
and
Texas.
I was like, hey, that's Fargo South there.
Yeah, where I was sitting back there, I didn't hear that he was from Frisco, Texas.
Gotcha.
It's kind of hard to hear in there sometimes if they don't speak well into the microphones.
Right.
Scott Samuelson, the other city council member, and I were sitting there listening, and Scott leaned over to me and he goes, we probably need to fix the speakers in this place. I said, I said, for all the money we spent here, it is hard to hear sometimes in this hall, especially when you're sitting back in the audience.
Right.
So I just kind of chuckled at that. And my old ears don't hear everything right anyway.
Well, that's funny though. That's funny. Get to see it from the other point of view.
So I don't know. I mean, I think it's a good thing. Again, we'll see. I don't know as a city council how much of it we'll see and have to deal with. I'm sure there'll be things down the road, and there'll be questions that'll be raised both on Trinity's behalf and on EHC's behalf that we're going to have to talk about and address as a community.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think that it's exciting for Minot. I think it's exciting for Minot just from the pure standpoint that people are looking to develop that's not even just a new restaurant. That's not a new car wash. That's not a new oil change place. That's not a new
Why do you think
place.
they're looking at these things?
Yeah, potentially word has gone out that Minot's open to development. I'm sure they watched our podcast. That's why. But
also the Sentinel project. I think people are starting to realize that the Sentinel project isn't now a 10-year out project because of costs. They're going to start to shrink it down and pull it all together at one time. And so you want to be here when that kicks off, right?
Yeah.
You want to be established. You want to be ready to go because that's going to bring a lot of people to town, a lot of businesses to town, and a lot of different things. So I think that's part of what we're seeing.
So something that needs to be addressed quickly is the lack of housing. And
absolutely. It is 100%. We have to figure out a way to let development happen, to get it done, but the city isn't paying for it, and the citizens necessarily aren't going to pay all of it, right? And I mean, like with special assessments and paving districts, we've talked about, I've brought it up with the city. There's such a thing out there that cities and banks and places use called a development district. And so we're kind of talking about and exploring that where the city helps out, but the developers pay them back in a shorter time period rather than over a 10 to 20 year period, like taxing, special assessments. So it's something to look at, and it may be something that's beneficial and helpful, and we'll see if it can work for the city and the banks and the developers. But you're right. We need to get housing. But nationally, that's a thing too, you know, because of the cost of materials and because of everything that's gone on over the last 4 to 5 years with inflation. You know, how do you build a house in Minot with the cost of things up here that's less than $500,000 for somebody to buy and a developer or builder to make money on?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
No, you're right. It's what they do is this too. They go and they make them very template and they put them up in a hurry, and the quality suffers. Yeah,
but they still say, "Oh, well, the market says it's $500,000. May only really be a $300,000 house, but the market says it's $500,000, so that's what we're going to sell it at." Well, at that price too, not only lots, but at that price point, you're going to remove a lot of people that potentially can't buy that house. And so, again, with the development and the housing, it has to be done correctly, and it has to be done affordably, so people that need the homes, you know, can buy them.
The way that you fix it for the consumer is you get a minimum wage that's up like $20 an hour. 25, maybe 30.
Ask everybody in California and the West Coast how that's working. Yeah. So, I mean, how do you, you know, like I saw a lady, I think it was in Seattle. They just changed their minimum wage to $18.50 an hour, $20 an hour, whatever it was. And she closed her shop because she said, I can't afford to do this. And I mean, I ran a business for 10 years, and I tell you what, if I had to pay, I mean, we paid well. At least I felt like we paid well. But if you had to pay $18 to $20 an hour, you'd cut your staff in half and hope to sell the same amount of stuff because, you know, you're not spurring growth. You're actually constraining it because most businesses cannot pay that kind of wage.
Right.
I mean, you know, if you want to make that kind of wage, go to college, get a college degree, go to a 2-year college, do something. I mean, that is the way the world works, right? And I'm not taking away from anybody that wants to work at a restaurant, doesn't want to go to college, doesn't want to get vocational. I'm not taking away from that at all. They need to be able to make money. And that's where I think, like nationally, President Trump saying we're not going to tax tips. I think that's a wonderful incentive, right? Instead of raising the minimum wage that you're going to pay some of those folks, take the tips that they earn the majority of their income off of and make it not taxed. That's not a bad idea. So, I mean, but that's what the economy is demanding, not an 18 to 20 an hour, you know, a minimum wage. Like that's not sustainable.
Right. Yeah.
So
absolutely.
But
well, another
what
good
else?
podcast.
Great podcast today. It's good to be back. I always enjoy these.
Yeah, no, it's been a good time.
Yeah.
We
Did we miss anything?
I don't know, man. I feel like we covered a lot.
I came in all casual today, folks. Excuse me. Hat, t-shirt, hoodie. You know,
it's good.
Jonathan told me it was dress down Wednesday, but apparently I went.
Well, I didn't wear a suit coat, so
yeah, I like it. I like it. So, all right. Well, on to next week then.
Yeah.
All right.
Let it be.
Thank you everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next week at the Let's Talk About It Minot podcast.